What's going on, guys? Welcome to another round of The Pulse, presented to you by the Endeavor Cinema Group. My name is Ike Duncan, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Mr. Paul Cullum. Paul, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Thank you. Good.
Good. Now, you are the screenwriter for The Speed of Light, one of the 6 integral pieces of Jonathan Demme Presents Made in Texas.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are going to be debuting Made in Texas for the first time ever in Fort Worth. The series itself has had a little bit of a rebirth this year in 2015. How does that feel?
It feels fantastic. Do the work, take off 30 years, wait for the revival, try to be ready for it. So that's my strategy. Yeah.
I like it. That's a solid strategy. Now, a couple of questions about the film. You know, I had a chance to, I was exposed to it for the first time recently, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay, great.
I noticed you'd be hard-pressed to find a mother worse than the one depicted in this particular piece. Was that coincidental or intentional, or?
What are you saying?
I'm saying.
Did you know my mother?
I didn't. Okay. We never did meet.
All right, then that's nothing to do with it. No. It was about a cultural rift, which it was a period film, so it's set in just the months preceding the Kennedy assassination, so kind of before the 60s became the 60s. Mm-hmm. And it was about a cultural, rift where the post-war the cultures had drifted, and there was a rural America and there was a urban America, much like now, and there was this tension between them, but they never encountered each other, so they really didn't understand there was a tension. And then there was the National Defense Act during the 50s, where there's the Cold War and paranoia, and the acts were so America could see the country, but it's really to evacuate the cities in case of a nuclear, Armageddon attack. And so suddenly there's this hip, new, forward, progressive-looking America rolled back on this staid, old world, all the verities, that America, and they were put into close conjunction. So the people it's allegorical, the people were representing these two worlds, the people who are outdistancing all of the social mores, the way we raise our kids, the fantasies and myths that we allow ourselves to get us through.
So the allegory was not just a figment of my imagination.
It was, she's a terrible mother, and some of this plotting of it, the allegory is a terrible way to write because you wind up being programmatic and people match a pattern, but they don't really behave as.
Is that a response that you've gotten pretty regularly to the film?
It's a response I have given myself seeing the film 30 years later. I wish I had changed some of this stuff.
How does it compare to as the script was on paper and then you see the final product today, now that it's even been restored? How is that, comparatively speaking, with what you initially intended to do?
I think, it evolved over time, and I stayed with it, and the director was my best friend. One of the reasons I'm out kind of stumping for this or, answering questions as they arise, thank you very much, is the director passed away. The director is one of my close friends. We moved to New York in the 80s. We were all raring to go. He was in, Jonathan Demme was very kind, tried to get him Guggenheim Scholarship, showed our film at Walker Arts Center and lots of different places, and the films themselves showed in New York and went over really well. New York didn't realize, being the most provincial place on earth, didn't realize there was film scenes out in the world, and so it was like when punk rock hit and suddenly there's, punk rock in Austin and people couldn't really kind of fathom it. It was the same process.
The films kind of came as a shock to people. They weren't ready for that. They came well ahead of their time.
Maybe.
I also there's a couple of pretty glaring references to God in Speed of Light.
Do you think so?
Just a little touch. Now, did that have a deeper meaning, or was that?
Well, tell me what you mean.
Let's for example, in one of your opening scenes, you have the mother fundamentally tell her daughter, "There's no God, and you don't go anywhere when you die. Death is forever."
They're returning from a funeral. There's been a funeral. Mm-hmm. Grandfather died. Yeah. The meaning of that is that she is this sophisticate, right? So she's the coming world. She's dressed like Jackie Kennedy. She's got the Maryland wig on. She's driving the fire engine red T-Bird convertible. She's, you know, the America that the movie are selling, the other America. So these verities, these things, heaven, and we all, will be with Granddaddy when we die. And that's not really,
She doesn't feel that way.
She's too hip for that. And her daughter she's raising in her image, and her daughter is now sophisticated. She's 5. She can learn these things the hard way. It's not a good...
Then you have the cashier in the store that many people would describe as ignorant, saying, well, he just don't believe in God, or something to that effect.
That's right, yeah.
And she is she's right the opposite, as a matter of fact.
Well, what would divide those two worlds? I've given you this kind of programmatic, the schematic version of how I was trying to structure it. And there's the Kennedy era and the Eisenhower era, even though Eisenhower now is revealed to us as the most progressive president in our half century because he warned us against the military-industrial complex. But leave that aside. Between these two worlds, what would separate those? God would be one of the premier things that was abandoned with this new embrace of what? Popular culture, what?
Yeah.
Self-sufficiency, I don't know. But yeah, that would be one of the key things to go. And once that myth, that's what modernism, once that organizing principle is gone, then what happens? Wars and carnage.
Well, I strongly encourage our audience to check the film out, develop their own opinions.
Good. All right, fair enough.
Absolutely, absolutely. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
That's
you.
all the time we have today.
I really appreciate your
Paul Cullum.
interest.
Absolutely. Paul Cullum, this has been another Round of the Pulse. Thank you so much, guys, for watching it. We'll see you next time.